Those were heady days. We had great fights and great fighters down here, and you could pay them, and they were making more money than they've made in their lives. It may not compare to what's going on today, but what's going on today is an aberration. You can't even compare that because there's no business model when somebody gives a promoter $500 million and tells you to go promote fights. I mean, you know, some of these fighters today had to depend on the live gate to pay their purses. They'd starve. But hey, great for them that they're making this money. But
well, I think with a conversation like this, Russell, I think the city is turning over as you look and go up down other street. But we have to remember during that era of Mike Tyson era, Larry Holmes era, here in AC, when Donald Trump was promoting the fight, you had Mark Eddy and his whole team that came from Caesars and up there Grossingers that were in a plane crash. So when he lost, yeah, let Stan Hoffman talk about that, and then I'll follow up. Stan Hoffman, that's a no. Come on, Stan. That's why you're up here. Follow up.
Okay. The only reason I was in New York along with Frank Kell. We had come to make a deal for small promotions with the Trump people and Mark.
Right.
The function that we went to was a press conference, and it got so late that Mark had to get on a helicopter. There was a Trump helicopter.
Trump helicopter. That's
to
right.
go back, come back to Atlantic City, and he wanted to finish the deal, so he invited me to come along, and Frank, who lives here, and he said, we'll be there in the morning and we'll finish the deal for our deal in Atlantic City with Trump's people. Frank had an early morning meeting the following morning in New York with someone else. So he said, wait for me. Don't go with them now. Wait for me. We'll both go down tomorrow morning. Is that okay, Mark? Mark said, okay, get there early, otherwise I don't have time to make the deal with you. Okay, we leave. By the time I get home, my wife, who was sitting there, Lucille, back there, said to me, call Bob out immediately. I said, what? And she said, he's called me 5-6 times. He needs to know where you are, and are you okay? Are you okay? I said, well, here. I called Bob, and he said, you didn't die. I said, what is wrong? He said, that helicopter you told me you were going to get on with Frank.
And our commissioner here, you were supposed to be on that helicopter
You
yourself.
too? So, okay, thank God. You're like me. So that's the story. That's the story.
That helicopter. Yeah, if you can pass the mic, and Larry, could you follow up on that, because that was something major that affected. You had real executives that really love boxing, from Caesar's Palace and helped build Grossingers, in the Trump Plaza with all the big fights when they went down.
Russell couldn't have made it without it. No, you know what happened that day? We had a press conference here in Atlantic City that morning, and another one. That's how hot boxing was. And then we had another one in New York. But I had to drive. What happened? I had to drive home. I had to stop home because I live in North Jersey. So I had drove down, and I had to drive back home because I knew I had to stop and then go home. So I drove home, left my car at home, and took the train to New York from my house. Okay, and so I saw Mark Eddy coming through the hotel. I forgot what hotel it was. Well, he was walking the plaza, Donald Trump. And I was walking through the hotel, to go back to the train station, and I saw Mark Eddy and other guys getting ready to go to the helicopter. And he asked me, Larry, he called me Mr. H, we're going back. You want to come? You want to go? And I told him, no, Mark, I got to go home first. Right. You know? And I'm home taking a nap, like around noontime, you know, around the afternoon, and you know that news flash that comes up,
that comes across.
you know, and it said something about the Trump executives, you know, on the plane crash and all that. It woke me up, and I'm watching that, you know, and I'm like, wow.
But these guys were boxing guys. They knew what the revenue, the publicity they could get to their industry. It's all about the drop. They knew certain fights would pack guys in for the drop, for the money. And they would put the money up front back in them days, and they would sit ringside to watch these things. But Dave, you had wanted to follow up on something.
Yeah, I just wanted to give credit to Hard Rock for what they did when they reopened the Taj Mahal. As everybody knows, when the Taj was going strong, their main arena was the Mark G. Edis Arena after Mark passed away. So one of his partners was Bernie Dillon, who was heavily involved in Trump. Now he's at Hard Rock. So when they opened Hard Rock, they were talking about what to do. They totally revamped the arena. They were talking about what they were going to call it. Bernie and Mark Allen, who's the president of Hard Rock, he was also in Atlantic City back in those days, and he just said, there's no question, this is being still going to be called the Mark G. Edis Arena in memory of him and the other people who perished. Kind of an interesting side note, the first big fight in, gosh, I don't know, since Bernard fought Kovalev in 2014, took place at Hard Rock last year. With Kovalev fighting Eleider Alvarez. And kind of a touching side note to it was that Bernie Dillon insisted on having the weigh-in outside on the boardwalk. And that was also the case when I think it was Camacho Pazienza, maybe, that you were in the press conference for in New York. And they also held that weigh-in outside. It's okay. They also held that weigh-in outside of the Taj, and they had never done it again until this past year. So I just want to give a lot of credit to Bernie and Mark Allen, and even people like Ken Condon, who maybe doesn't get enough credit for keeping boxing alive in the '90s with Arturo Gatti and Kelly Pavlik and guys like that. When a lot of promoters and people turned their backs, and a lot of the casinos lost interest. Ken kept it alive, and he's not in a position to do that right now, unfortunately. Hopefully he will be again, but I got to give a shout out to those guys for doing what they can and for honoring Mark's memory the way they did.
You know, back in those days, but you know, with Donald Trump, the guy with the funny hairdo, Don King, let me tell you what, back in those days, boxing was exciting. Do you remember when we backed up the Atlantic City Expressway, every street all over, Bob, for 4, 5, 7, 8 blocks, jam-packed, couldn't nobody move, couldn't nobody come in, can't nobody go out, people start walking over to the arena. Isn't that amazing? But Stan wants to tell a Don King story, because Don King in those days had a lot to do with the success of Atlantic City boxing.
I'm going to tell you a story that there are all kinds of versions. Everybody knew what happened. And most of them were wrong. Actually, were all wrong until we tried to straighten it out a little bit. My guy, Hoffman, had just beat Lennox Lewis for the heavyweight title in Johannesburg, South Africa. We came back after the fight, and the boxing writers' dinner was a couple of nights later. We were all going, of course, because we were the king of the hill. Okay, I get a phone call from Don King, and he said, don't go to that dinner. So you can imagine what I told him to do. And he said, Stan, I'm going to make you a deal. You'll accept. He didn't say that you won't refuse. You know, can't refuse. I said, Don, we're all set. We've got a table. He said, just listen to me. I took him, I rolled the dice. I said to Hoffman, who said, are you crazy? We went to Don's Hotel, which was on 58th Street, 6th Avenue. And we got to a suite, and Don said, "You're not leaving here till we make a deal for the rematch." I said, "Don, we're not even thinking about that right now." He said, "We gotta make a deal." I said, "Well, our promoter then, Cedric, offered us $3 million. Now, Cedric later said it was 5, but it was $3 million. And, you know, we all do that. Okay. And I said, "Don, you gonna match that?" He said, "Oh, easy." I said, "No, you don't understand." Now, I had been a sport fan then, I am now, and I saw all these athletes getting all these signing bonuses to sign with teams and so forth. And nobody knew I was going to say it, including me. I said, "Okay, then let's talk business, period. I want $5 million as a bonus by fight." Now, I swear on everything holy, until that moment, I had no idea what I was going to say. And he started the usual Don King. "Hey, you motherfucker, you know. I said, "Don, thanks. Rock, rock. Let's go. We're going to dinner." We started walking out of the suite, and running after us, just as we were about to get to the elevator, was what's his name? Oh, I can't think. Isidore, Don's guy, says, Stan, come back. Don needs to see you 1 more minute." Went back. Don said, "We have a deal. I'll give you the $5 million. And I said, "Right. And after we sign that, we'll sit down and talk about what you're going to pay us for the fight." Agreed. We shook hands. And it took a while, by the way. It didn't take as fast as I did it. You don't do anything quick with Don. And he said, "Okay, we got a deal. We'll sign the deal for the fight later." He said, "Okay, we're finished." I said, "I want the $5 million right now." He said, now Rock was sweating. He's saying, "This little, what do you call it, is gonna blow me $5 million. The most we ever made was the 100,000. We had a fight. That's right. And 25,000 expenses." Okay, so Don said, I'm here in a hotel. What do you want me to do?" I said, "Go get your checkbook and write me a check for $5 million. He said, I don't have $5 million in my personal checkbook. When I get back to the office, I'll do it." I said, I want a check. He said, wait a minute, I got something for you. And he calls Isidore, who was in the other room. And he says, "Isidore, bring that bag out." And out comes Isidore holding a clothing bag, plastic bag, that you can see through. And I said, "What in the world is that?" He says, "This is $200,000 in cash. Hoffman, go out and have a good time, and I send you the check Monday." And give me that. And actually, he bought 2 Rolex watches the next day.
Yeah, it ended up being a $1 million cash deal.
Well, no, listen.
All right.
$200,000. So I said, "Write me a check for $4.8 million. He said, "I don't have the money. Give me a chance to get it transferred." I said, "Don, that's it. Take your money back." Rock was holding it, not pulling it. And he says, "All right, but you can't give it till I tell you." And I swear to God, I'm not everything holy my life or whatever. Don King's personal check for $4,800,000. I only hope that we're going to keep the deal. We left, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and that was the deal. $5 million, $200,000 in cash, and $4,800,000 in a check.
Wow, let's give them a round of applause. We heard some great stories. But we have some great, I've seen a great champion, Iran Barkley. Let's give him a round of applause. Hall of Fame. Kelly Pavitt, a great champion. I seen him come through. I don't know if he's still in here. But, you know, this guy's Mr. Excitement, too. I used to train his father, Hector Camacho Jr. Macho time! Macho time! And when it comes to boxing, before, you know, we're closing, Nigel Collins, man, you know, Ring Magazine, editor-in-chief, analyst for ESPN right here, is being inducted over the weekend, Hall of Famer right here. Yeah, the house is packing up. But let me kick it back here so we can start closing up here a little bit. I know, you know.